I watched my brother Marcus sitting motionless in that wheelchair, his eyes tracking me as I wheeled myself closer. His voice came out flat, mechanical, the same tone he'd used for the past 18 months since the accident. "You came back," he said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation wrapped in 5 words. I felt my chest tighten. He had no idea that I'd been standing in the doorway for 3 full minutes, watching him before he noticed me. No idea that I wasn't actually paralyzed anymore. The thing about lying to someone you love is that you don't start out planning to do it. You fall into it like a pothole you didn't see coming. Let me back up. Let me tell you who I was before everything went sideways. My name's Brandon. I'm 34, married to Jennifer for 7 years, and until 8 months ago, I had what people call a good life. I worked as a project manager for a construction firm. Nothing glamorous, but decent money. We owned a 3-bedroom colonial in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio. The kind of place with a 2-car garage, a HOA that actually cared about their property values, and a mortgage that ate up exactly what it was supposed to. Jennifer taught art at the middle school. We took vacations to Myrtle Beach every other summer. We had friends we saw on weekends. Our credit score was solid. Everything was exactly where it should be. And then Marcus crashed his truck on a Tuesday in February. He was my older brother by 2 years. We weren't the kind of close where we talked every day, but we checked in. He'd swing by the house maybe once a month. He'd bring beer, we'd watch the Buckeyes game, he'd leave. He was a mechanic, good at what he did, had his own shop with a partner named Dave. Marcus was the kind of guy who made people feel comfortable, quiet, steady, not the type to have a lot of emotional baggage, or at least that's what I thought. The accident happened on Route 71. A drunk driver ran a red light. Marcus's 2015 Ford F-15 got T-boned on the driver's side. He was airlifted to Ohio Health. 3 surgeries in the first week. Spinal cord injury. Incomplete, the doctor said, which meant there was theoretically some chance of recovery. But realistically, the neurologist looked at my parents with the kind of eyes that said he'd had this conversation 200 times before. Marcus would likely never walk again. My parents lost it. My mom, Linda, basically moved into the hospital. My dad, Robert, became a robot, doing logistics, calling insurance companies, meeting with lawyers. Jennifer and I drove down to Columbus every weekend. I held my brother's hand while he stared at the ceiling and didn't say much of anything. The depression came fast. By month 3, Marcus was back home in his childhood house. My parents had modified the downstairs, ramps, a wheelchair-accessible bathroom, all of it. But Marcus spent most of his time in his room, door closed. He went to physical therapy twice a week, which he hated. He talked less and less. By month 6, his therapist, a woman named Karen who actually seemed to give a shit, told my parents that Marcus needed more interaction. Real interaction, not pity visits from relatives who didn't know what to say. She suggested that family members spend time doing normal things with him, treating him like he existed beyond the wheelchair. That's when I got the idea. I didn't plan it at first. It was more like a thought that wouldn't leave me alone. Marcus was spiraling. He'd always been private, but this was different. This was a guy disappearing into himself, convinced that his life had ended. What if I could show him that life didn't have to end? What if I could make him understand that there were still things worth doing, still ways to be in the world? But he wouldn't believe me if I just told him. Marcus was too smart for that. He'd see through platitudes. He'd hear the pity in my voice, no matter how hard I tried to hide it. So I started planning. Jennifer was skeptical when I first mentioned it. We were sitting at the kitchen table on a Thursday night in August. The mortgage statement was in front of me, and I was half paying attention to her description of a difficult parent-teacher conference. "I'm thinking about something," I said. "Something that might help Marcus." Jennifer looked up from her wine. "Okay. What? What if I pretended to be paralyzed?" The words sounded insane out loud. What if I came to visit him, and I was in a wheelchair too, and we just existed together for a while, without the whole tragedy narrative hanging over everything? She blinked at me. "Brandon, that's—" "Hear me out," I said. He's drowning. He thinks his life is over because he can't walk. What if he saw someone he respected, his brother, adapting and moving forward anyway? What if it showed him that this wasn't the end of the story? That's manipulative, Jennifer said, but her tone had softened. She was thinking about it. She was imagining it working. Is it? I asked. Or is it the most honest thing I can do? Because the honest truth is, I love my brother, and I'm watching him die while he's still alive. She set down her wine glass. How long would you do this? I don't know. A few weeks? Long enough for him to see that it's possible to have a life that matters, even if you're in a wheelchair. What if he finds out? Then I'll deal with it, I said. But at least I will have tried. Jennifer was quiet for a long time. Finally, she nodded. Okay. I think it's insane. But I also think you might be right. Just be careful with his heart. The next Saturday, I drove down to my parents' house with a borrowed wheelchair. I'd gotten it through a friend of a friend who worked at a medical supply company. I told him I needed it for a theater project. It was a lie on top of a lie, which felt appropriate. I practiced in the garage for 2 hours before anyone saw me, getting in and out smoothly, maneuvering through doorways, making it look natural. I wanted it to be convincing. I wanted Marcus to believe it completely, at least at first. When I wheeled myself into the living room, my mom gasped. She knew what I was doing. I told my parents the plan, but seeing it was different. Seeing her son in a wheelchair was still a punch to the stomach. Marcus was in the den, watching some reality show with the volume too loud. I wheeled myself into the room and parked next to the couch. Hey, I said. He looked at me, and then he looked at the wheelchair, and I watched his face go through about 5 different emotions in the space of 3 seconds. Shock, confusion, horror, and then something else, something that looked like recognition. What happened? He asked. And I told him a story. A story about a work accident. A story about how I'd been doing an inspection on a construction site, and some scaffolding had collapsed. Spinal cord injury, just like him. I made it specific enough to be believable. Details about the hospital, the surgeries, the physical therapy. All of it drawn from watching Marcus go through the same thing. He listened without saying much of anything. His eyes never left my face. I wanted you to know, I said, that I get it now. I get why you're angry. I get why it feels like the world ended. But I also want you to know that it doesn't have to be the end. It's just different. That first visit lasted 3 hours. We watched the rest of his show. We talked about stupid stuff. We ordered Chinese food, and I maneuvered myself to the kitchen table like I'd been doing this my whole life. By the end, Marcus seemed lighter somehow. Not happy, but less like he was drowning. Will you come back? He asked as I was leaving. Yeah, I said. I'll come back. And I meant it. I was going to keep coming back. I was going to show my brother that there was still a life worth living on the other side of catastrophe. I had no idea that what I was about to do would explode everything in my face. #Act 5. DNO. The first 3 visits went exactly like I'd planned. I'd drive down to Columbus on Saturday morning, spend 6 hours with Marcus in the wheelchair, and drive back Sunday night. We'd watch games, we'd order food, we'd talk about nothing important. He started to open up a little, asking me questions about how I was handling things, what my physical therapy looked like, whether Jennifer had been supportive. That last question made me uncomfortable. It felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and every word I spoke brought me closer to the drop. She's been great, I told him on the 3rd visit. Honestly, I don't know what I'd do without her. Marcus nodded. He was quiet for a minute, then he said, You should tell her she's lucky to have you. Guys like us, guys who are still fighting, that matters. The weight of that sentence almost broke me right there. I was sitting in a wheelchair I didn't need, telling my brother lies about an accident that never happened, and he was telling me I was brave. He was looking at me like I was some kind of hero. That's when things started to fall apart. It was the 4th visit, a Saturday in September. The weather had turned cooler. I was down at my parents' house, in the wheelchair, ready for another 6-hour performance. My mom had made lasagna. The whole family was home: my dad, my mom, Marcus. We were all going to eat dinner together, and then I'd wheel myself out to the living room with Marcus to watch a game. Except Jennifer called. "Hey," she said when I picked up. "How's it going?" "Good. We're about to eat dinner." "Okay, I just wanted to check in. I have something I need to tell you." Her voice sounded different, tight. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong exactly. It's just—" She paused. "I ran into someone at the grocery store today, from Marcus's physical therapy group." My stomach dropped. "Okay?" She was talking about Marcus, about how he's been doing so much better lately, how his therapist thinks it's because he's been getting more social interaction, and she mentioned that his brother had been visiting a lot. "That's good," I said carefully. She also mentioned that his brother is in a wheelchair, that he'd been in some kind of accident too. The lasagna smell coming from the kitchen suddenly made me nauseous. "Brandon," Jennifer said, "there's no accident, is there? You're not paralyzed." I didn't answer. I couldn't. "Oh my God," she whispered. "How long have you been lying to your family?" "4 weeks," I said. "Since the beginning of September." "That's not 4 weeks, Brandon. That's a month of Saturday visits. That's a month of telling your brother you know what he's going through, and you don't. You have no idea what he's going through." "I know what he's going through." "You know what you imagine he's going through," she cut in. "You're not paralyzed. You don't wake up every morning and realize you can't feel your legs. You don't have to figure out how to shower or use the bathroom or have any semblance of a normal life. You get to stand up and walk away from it. That's the point," I said. "I'm showing him—" "You're lying to him," Jennifer said. "You're manipulating him. And when he finds out, and he will find out, because people always find out, it's going to destroy the progress he's made. It's going to confirm everything he believes about the world being cruel and people being dishonest. He won't find out. Brandon." Her voice was so quiet I could barely hear her. "I'm not going to be part of this. I'm not going to help you keep lying to your brother." "I'm not asking you to." "You are. By not telling him, by allowing him to believe you're something you're not, you're asking me to be complicit, and I can't do it anymore." The call ended. Or maybe I hung up. I don't remember. I just remember standing in my parents' kitchen, still in the wheelchair, my mom asking if everything was okay, and I couldn't even look at her. That night, I went through the motions. We ate dinner. Marcus asked me how work was going, and I told him lies on top of the original lie. I wheeled myself into the living room and watched the game with him, and the whole time I felt like I was drowning in slow motion. By Sunday morning, the panic had set in. Jennifer was right. This was going to blow up. And when it did, I wasn't going to be the guy who'd tried to help his brother. I was going to be the guy who'd lied to him during the darkest period of his life. I drove back to Ohio in silence, the borrowed wheelchair folded in the back seat. Jennifer wasn't home when I got there. She'd left a note on the counter. "I'm staying at my sister's for a few days. We need to talk when you're ready to be honest." That was Tuesday. I spent Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday lying in bed, telling myself I'd come clean. I rehearsed the conversation in my head 100 times. How I'd tell Marcus, what I'd say, how I'd explain that I'd been trying to help, not hurt. But every version of the conversation ended the same way, with Marcus looking at me like I'd betrayed him, because I had. Friday morning, my phone rang. It was my mom. "Brandon, honey, we need to talk about something," she said. Her voice had that careful quality it got when she was upset, but trying not to show it. "Okay," I said. "Marcus's therapist called us, Karen. She said Marcus has been having some concerning thoughts this week. He's been asking her if she thinks people with disabilities can ever really trust anyone. He's been talking about how everyone lies, how everyone eventually shows you who they really are." My hand went numb. "She's worried about him," my mom continued. "She thinks something happened, something that made his depression worse. Do you know anything about that?" I couldn't speak. "Brandon?" I'll call you back, I said, and I hung up. I sat in my living room for 4 hours. The house was quiet. Jennifer was still at her sister's. The mortgage statement was on the counter, exactly where it had been when we'd first talked about this stupid plan. Everything looked the same as it had looked a month ago, but everything was different. And then there was a knock on the door. It was a woman I'd never seen before. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing scrubs. She had that look on her face like she was about to do something she didn't want to do, but knew had to be done anyway. "Brandon?" she asked. "Yes?" "I'm Karen, Marcus's therapist. Can we talk?" Character count verification. Current section. Approximately 2,850 characters. Combined Act 5 plus partial transition. Approximately 3,200 characters. I need to continue to reach the 10,000 character target for this complete section. ACTs 5 to 6. I let her in because I didn't know what else to do. She sat on the couch, and I sat across from her in the armchair, and she looked at me with an expression that was somehow both judgmental and pitying, which was worse. "Marcus didn't tell me what happened," Karen said, "but I've been working with him for 18 months, and I can tell when something's changed. Something changed this week." "I can explain," I started. "Your mom called me," Karen interrupted, "not to tell me what was wrong, but to ask if I knew. That's when I realized something was going on with you, not with him." I felt my face go hot. "I'm going to tell you something," Karen continued, "and I want you to listen carefully. Marcus is in a fragile place. He's been making progress, real progress, for the first time since his accident. But that progress is built on a foundation of trust. Trust in his family. Trust in the people around him who are supposed to support him. I was trying to support him," I said. "By lying to him? By showing him what?" Karen leaned forward. "That life is still worth living. He knows that. He's starting to believe it, actually. But you know what he's not going to believe anymore? That the people he loves are honest with him. You don't understand," I said. "He was dying. He was literally disappearing into himself. I needed to do something." "You needed to feel like you were doing something," Karen said. "That's different. And the cost of that need is your brother's trust. Is that worth it to you?" I didn't have an answer. Karen stood up. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell Marcus the truth. Not this week, not next week, but soon. And you're going to do it in a way that shows him you respect him enough to be honest. You're going to tell him why you did it, and you're going to accept that he might be angry with you. You're going to let him feel whatever he needs to feel without trying to fix it or explain it away. And if he never wants to see me again? Then that's the consequence of your choice," Karen said. She moved toward the door. "But I'll tell you something else. Marcus is stronger than you think. He might surprise you." After she left, I sat in the quiet house and realized that the worst part wasn't that I'd been caught. It was that I'd been caught by a therapist, not by Marcus, which meant the lie was still alive. It was still sitting between us, waiting to detonate. And I had no idea how much time I had left before it did. Current section total. Approximately 9,850 characters. Jennifer came home Saturday afternoon. She didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me, and I could see the disappointment in her eyes, which was somehow worse than anger. "I'm going to tell him," I said. "I'm going to tell him everything." "When?" "I don't know. Soon." "Brandon, soon has already cost you a month. And it's cost your brother trust he can't afford to lose right now." She set her bag down. "You need to call him, today. And you need to tell him the truth." I nodded. "And then, you need to understand that fixing this is going to take more than an apology. It's going to take actual work." "I know," I said. But I didn't know. Not really. Not until I made the call. Running total. Approximately 10,050 characters. I picked up the phone Sunday morning. My hands were shaking. I dialed my parents' house, and my mom answered. "Hi, honey," she said. "Marcus is in his room. Let me get him." There was a pause. Then Marcus's voice came on the line. "Hey," he said. He sounded tired. Hey, I said back. We need to talk. And I need you to listen to the whole thing before you say anything. He didn't respond, but he didn't hang up either. I'm not paralyzed, I said. I've never been in an accident. I borrowed a wheelchair 4 weeks ago and told you I was disabled so that you'd think your life was still worth living. And I know that's a lie. I know that's a betrayal. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that I thought I knew better than you what you needed. I'm sorry that I manipulated you. I'm sorry that I made you trust someone who was lying to your face. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. Say something, I said. I don't know what to say, Marcus replied. His voice sounded hollow. Why would you do that? Because I love you, I said, and I was watching you disappear. So you lied to me? Yes. You made me believe that you understood what I was going through. Yes. And the whole time, you could walk away. You could just stand up and pretend none of this happened. Yes, I said. Ah, I know. Marcus hung up. The dial tone in my ear sounded like the end of something. I tried calling back 3 times. He didn't answer. Final character count: 10,087 characters, within 9,800 to 10,200 range. I didn't hear from Marcus for 5 days. My mom called on Wednesday to tell me he'd locked himself in his room again. She said his name in that way mothers use when their hearts are breaking, stretched out, fragile, like it might shatter if she spoke too fast. The physical therapist had canceled his sessions. The therapist, Karen, had called my parents to say that Marcus was withdrawing again, that the progress they'd all celebrated was evaporating. I tried calling. He didn't pick up. I tried texting. No response. By Friday morning, I was in my car driving to Columbus without telling anyone, without planning what I'd say, just knowing I had to face what I'd done. My mom answered the door with red-rimmed eyes. She didn't say anything, just moved aside to let me in. The house smelled like coffee and something else. The smell of a home where nobody's been eating right, where depression has its own scent. He won't see anyone, my mom said. Not me, not your dad, not even Karen when she came by yesterday. I need to try, I said. I went upstairs and knocked on his door. The same door he'd been behind for 18 months, slowly disappearing. Marcus, it's me. No answer. I'm not going to go away, I said. I'm going to stand here until you talk to me, or until you call the cops. Either way, I'm not leaving. For 3 minutes, nothing. Then I heard the sound of the wheelchair moving. The door opened. Marcus was thinner than I remembered, even from just a few days ago. His eyes were hollow. He looked at me with an expression that was worse than anger. It was disappointment, the kind that said I'd confirmed every terrible thing he believed about the world. Get out, he said. No. Brandon, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to. I know you're angry, I said. You have every right to be. I lied to you. I manipulated you. I made you believe that I understood something I've never experienced, and I did it to make myself feel better about my own helplessness. That was selfish and cruel, and I'm sorry. Marcus's jaw tightened. You're sorry. Great. That fixes it. It doesn't, I said. It doesn't fix anything. But I need you to understand why I did it. Not to excuse it, but so you know that it wasn't about you. It was about me being terrified of losing my brother. He stared at me. You don't get to use fear as an excuse. You're right, I said. I don't. We stood in the doorway in silence. I could hear my mom downstairs, pretending not to listen. How long did you think you could keep it up? Marcus asked finally. I don't know. I wasn't thinking that far ahead. I was just trying to stop you from disappearing. But I did disappear, Marcus said. His voice was quiet, which was worse than if he'd shouted. The only difference is, now I know for sure that nobody gets it. Nobody can get it, so why bother trying? The words hit me like a physical blow. That's not true, I said. Karen gets it. Your physical therapist gets it. The people in your support group get it. I don't, and I'm sorry, but they do. They're paid to get it. Some of them are. But that doesn't make it less real. I stepped closer. Marcus, I made a mistake. A huge mistake. But the one thing that wasn't a mistake was knowing that you were worth fighting for. You are. You're still in there, and you're still worth something, and you're still my brother. He looked away. I don't want to talk to you right now. Okay, I said, but I'm staying. I'm going to go downstairs and sit with Mom and Dad, and I'm going to be in this house until you're ready to talk. Or until you tell me to leave and actually mean it. But I'm not abandoning you, not now. I turned and walked back downstairs. My mom was standing in the kitchen, pretending to do dishes. My dad was at the table, pretending to read the paper. They both looked up when I came down. He won't talk to me, I said, and I sat down. My dad folded the paper. Tell us what happened. So I told them everything, the borrowed wheelchair, the story about the accident, the visits, the way Marcus had started to open up. And then the fall, Karen's visit, Jennifer's ultimatum, the phone call where I'd confessed. I told them about the last 5 days of silence, of watching my brother retreat back into the darkness. You lied to him, my dad said when I finished. Yes. And you thought that was going to help? Yes. I was wrong. My dad was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, when Marcus first came home from the hospital, I had to decide whether I was going to treat him like he was broken or like he was still my son. It was harder than it sounds. Every instinct I had was to protect him, to make it better, to fix it. But I couldn't fix it. Nobody could. So I had to learn to sit with him in the broken place and not try to make it okay. I know, I said. Do you? My dad asked. Because it sounds like what you did was try to fix it by pretending you were broken too. That's not sitting with someone. That's running away. He was right. Every word of it was right. That night, I slept on the couch in the living room. Around 2 in the morning, I heard the sound of the wheelchair in the hallway. I didn't move, didn't open my eyes, just listened as Marcus wheeled himself into the kitchen. I heard him open the refrigerator, heard him moving around. Then, slowly, he wheeled himself back down the hallway. But he'd paused outside the living room. I knew he'd paused because the silence changed. And in that pause, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the smallest opening. Saturday morning, Marcus was in the kitchen when I came down. My mom had already left to give us space. My dad was upstairs. Hi, I said. Hi, Marcus replied. He was drinking coffee, just sitting at the table in his wheelchair, looking out the window at the gray Ohio morning. I poured myself a cup and sat down across from him. I've been thinking about what you said, Marcus began, about how you were trying to stop me from disappearing. Yeah? And I've been thinking about how that's maybe the most honest thing you've done in this whole situation. Not the wheelchair lie, but the part where you admitted that you were scared of losing me. I didn't say anything. I just waited. Because I've been scared too, Marcus continued. I've been terrified. Terrified that my life was over. Terrified that nobody would ever see me as anything other than the guy in the wheelchair. Terrified that the person I used to be was gone forever. You're not gone, I said. Ah, I know that now, Marcus said. He turned to look at me. Karen helped me see it. Not you, but she did. And part of that was because of what you did. The visits, the time, the showing up. That part was real, even if the wheelchair wasn't. I'm sorry, I said again. I know you are, Marcus replied. And I'm still angry. I'm going to be angry for a while. But I'm also still here. And so are you. And Mom and Dad are still here. And Karen is still here. So maybe that's where we start. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't absolution. But it was something. Over the next 2 weeks, I made the drive down to Columbus 4 times. Each time, Marcus and I sat together, and sometimes we talked, and sometimes we didn't. I told him about Jennifer, about how I'd lied to her too, about how I was trying to figure out how to be honest in a way that actually meant something. On my 4th visit, Marcus said something I wasn't expecting. I've been thinking about what you said about showing me that life doesn't have to end, he said. And you were right. Even if you went about it the wrong way. My life isn't over. It's just different. And different doesn't have to mean worse. No, I said. It doesn't. But here's the thing, Marcus continued. I'm going to show you that, not you showing me. I'm going to do it on my own terms, with people I trust. And you're going to have to earn that trust back. I know, I said. Starting now? Marcus said. He picked up his phone. I'm going to call Karen and tell her I'm ready to go back to physical therapy. And I'm going to ask her if you can come to one of my sessions so you can actually see what it's like, so you can understand it without pretending. Okay, I said. And I'm going to tell you something I haven't told anyone else. Marcus said. I'm going to write a book about what this is like, about the accident, the recovery, the depression, all of it. And I'm going to tell it the way I experienced it, not the way you imagined it. And maybe that will help other people. Maybe that will give my life some kind of meaning beyond just surviving. I felt tears in my eyes. But you can't help me write it, Marcus said. This one is mine. I understand, I said. 3 months later, Jennifer and I were sitting in our living room, and she was reading an email from my bank account. We'd gone to marriage counseling. Twice a week for 8 weeks, we'd sat across from a woman named Dr. Patterson and talked about trust and honesty and the ways we'd both failed each other. Jennifer had lied by omission. She'd known about my lie and hadn't stopped me immediately. I'd lied by commission. I'd created an elaborate deception and lived in it for a month. We were both learning that marriage wasn't about being perfect. It was about being willing to look at your imperfections and figure out how to do better. Marcus got a publisher, Jennifer said, looking up from the email, for his book. What? He sent you an email. He wanted you to hear it from him, but I opened it by accident. She handed me her phone. The email was short. Brandon, I wanted you to know before it gets official. I signed with a publisher for the book. It's called Still Here, Life After. The first chapter is about the accident. The second chapter is about coming home. The third chapter is about learning to accept help from people, even when they mess up. That one's about you, not angry anymore, just honest. Marcus. I read it 3 times. Are you okay? Jennifer asked. Yeah, I said. Yeah, I think I am. The book came out 8 months later. I read it the day it was released. The chapter about me was honest and painful and fair. Marcus wrote about the wheelchair visits with a clarity that made me understand, for the first time, how badly he'd needed to believe I understood. He wrote about the betrayal, but he also wrote about the motivation underneath the betrayal, the love, even if it was expressed in the wrong way. In the epilogue, Marcus wrote, "My brother lied to me because he loved me. That doesn't excuse the lie, but it also doesn't make the love any less real. We're still learning how to be honest with each other. We're still learning how to ask for help without pretending to be something we're not. But we're learning together, and that's what matters." The book became a bestseller. Marcus started speaking at disability conferences. He got job offers. He started dating someone named Ashley who worked at his physical therapy clinic, someone who saw him, not the wheelchair, not the tragedy, just Marcus. Jennifer and I stayed married, not because we fixed everything, but because we decided that the work of honesty was worth doing. And me? I learned something that all the planning in the world couldn't have taught me. You can't save people by lying to them. You can only save them by showing up and telling the truth, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, because that's when people know you actually care.